Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Welcome to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. Hello, everybody. How's it going today? I hope you are having a wonderful day. I hope the sun is shining. I hope you're feeling good. Hope you're having a good week. I'm feeling pretty good, if you can't tell. I'm excited just to share these positive, feel-good stories with you. As you know, it is probably, it is the best part of my day, and I just love that I get to share positive, feel-good news, especially when there are so many negative headlines these days, and I just get to bring all the positivity, and I love it. I love it so much. So let's just jump right into it. I have some awesome stories to share with you today. I got stuff about the pandemic. I got stuff about racial equality. I got cool scientific facts. I got some good stuff today, so let's just go right ahead. Now, first thing I want to talk about is about the pandemic. All positive, I promise. There is a new website. It's called Pandemic of Love, and it has connected 132,000 people in the need of aid with those who can help. Pretty awesome. I know there has been so many people and companies and organizations that are doing what they can to help out people during this time. I just love seeing more and more like this pandemic of love. I think it's so cool. So in South Florida, a woman started an online grassroots effort originally meant to make a modest impact just in her community, but now it has raised literally millions of dollars for hundreds of thousands of people around the world. So her name is Shelly Tygelski. She's a local mindfulness teacher, which is pretty cool. So she launched her Pandemic of Love in Fort Lauderdale after seeing people around her just losing jobs, and it kind of just inspired her to get something started. So she was, worried not just about the money, but also just their health amidst, of course, the COVID-19 crisis. So her social media feeds just grew a buzz with, fear, anxiety, and so she decided to take this as an opportunity and create something pretty positive. So she says, I want to turn from this environment of fear to an opportunity for us to create connection, community, and strengthen the bonds of love between us. So basically, it all started out very simply. She posted a video on Instagram. This is back in March when kind of everything started to explode. And she announced a new program aimed at connecting those who connecting those with a need due to loss of income with those who are in a position of privilege and able to do of this service. So when she went to bed that night, she wasn't sure how much, her good efforts would do, how far it would go. She was really just wanting to help out her community. But as she woke up in the morning, she received 400 requests for assistance and 500 offers of help. Pretty awesome. She said, I really just thought this would be a community thing for the South Florida community, for the people who come to our meditation group on Sundays, and that's it. That would have been enough. But it turned into so much more than that. So, pretty cool. So she says people in literally all corners of the world have come together and actually started to exchange, different things online. And it's all under her Love Pandemic banner. And she's just super happy. She says that many groups that sprung up around the U.S. and people have been using the Pandemic of Love website to offer assistance. There's 16 different countries so far. Mexico, Iceland, Chile, Australia, of course the United States. She says the majority of the people that are seeking help just want to stock up on food and supplies for the children, and the average request is about $150. But, it's just COVID-19 has created this very large and visible need, and she hopes that this Pandemic of Love project will continue to grow even after the days of coronavirus are over. Is not going to be a sight. On a personal level, it shows me that a person can make a difference when you aggregate this act of kindness. You know, viruses can be scary things, but the word viral does not have to be negative. A lot of positive things can go viral, like hope and faith and love can be the cure. Pretty cool. So this platform has raised more than $13 million, connected more than 132,000 people, like I said at the beginning. So if you are somebody that needs support or you want to help out, go over to the Pandemic of Love website and go be a part of it. I think it's such a cool thing that she has created. Pandemic of Love. Cool. All right, so now my next one I want to share with you. Band-Aid has officially announced that it will finally be making bandages for darker skin tones. Pretty interesting, right? So just in the response to the recent, worldwide support for Black Lives Matter protest, Band-Aid announced last week that it will be expanding its product line to include bandages with range of different skin tones. So the company says, "We hear you, we see you, we're listening to you. We stand in solidarity with our Black colleagues, collaborators, and community in the fight against racism, violence, and injustice. We are committed to taking actions to create tangible change for the Black community." So the bandages will come in light, olive, and darker shades of brown and black tones to reflect the diversity of consumers who all need bandages. So I just thought it was such a cool thing. So basically, they are coming out with that quite soon. They obviously have got some feedback before that they didn't have those different shades, but now they have announced that they hear us and they are going to make a change. I just thought it was a cool little thing, so I wanted to share with you. Now, let's talk about some pretty cool jobs that is happening. So, San Francisco company on a mission is basically wanting to re-image waste, and now they are providing meaningful work to ex-convicts, and it's making them help just build a more sustainable world and give them, that second chance of having a job and having a life and creating that life that they want to live. So, Brightmark's main projects have included, an innovative plastics recycling program, and they're developing renewable natural gas from food and agricultural waste. But now, Brightmark has partnered with the social enterprise Recycle Force, it's called, and they recycle electronics. But Recycle Force, of course, it's helping the planet, but they also want to uplift the humans as well that are living on our planet. So, they are training basically ex-convicts, men and women, that are trying to transition back into society. So they say our main mission is not recycling at all. Our mission is to help people that are coming out of jail and prison with training, mental health, drug addiction, housing, and then help them get a job. Pretty cool. Many former prisoners who are committed to bettering themselves, they face great barriers with employment. It is so normal, right? There's a lot of places that will not hire them. So it's the difficulty around finding work that often leads people to return back to their previous path of life. So that's why, Recycle Force is really important, and the things that they are doing, I just think is so cool. So only 23% of those who participate in this program go on to reoffend, compared to the 60 to 75% that the average number nationwide in the U.S. that actually, take on this new pathway of life and go at it in a positive light and take advantage of it. So Robert Smith, he is the actually warehouse manager, and he says, Recycle Force gave me a choice, and I picked Recycle Force instead of the street, and I believe it saved my life. That's why I'm here today. So many people are not aware that 91% of plastic waste in the United States ends up in a landfill every year. So part of the reason for this is that much of it compromises different types of plastics mixed together. So sorting them was quite time consuming and difficult and kind of impossible sometimes when trying to salvage the waste into something that's reusable. So now Recycle Force is assisting Brightmark with its mixed plastics recycling program. And then their plastics to fuel process works by breaking down the plastic to the point that it can be made into diesel and various wax products. Brightmark's new plant in Indianapolis actually scheduled to be completed next year, and they are hoping to partnership with Recycle Force and have this, kind of whole thing just blow up and make it amazing. So it's all part of Brightmark's stated mission to divert 8.4 million metric tons of plastic from landfills and the environment, and to offset the release of 22 million metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions annually. Pretty cool. So they say over the past 2 years, Brightmark has had more than tripled the size of its staff, garnered about $150 million in equity investments in its projects, and acquired property technology that will create a circular economy for post-use plastics. And now they're also helping not just the planet, but so many people stay on a positive path of life. I just think all around, such a cool thing, such a cool company doing such amazing things. So I just had to share. All right, it is time for a little bit of a break, but when we get back, I have a really cool story about the fifth state of matter that has been observed in space for the very first time. You don't want to miss this story. It's pretty cool. Stay tuned.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. Hello. Okay, let's get right back in to these feel-good, positive stories for you today. So, I mentioned that I have a story about the fifth state of matter. It has been observed in space for the first time. So, scientists have observed officially the fifth state of matter in space for the first time using ultra-cold atoms, which offer an unprecedented opportunity to unlock the mysterious of the quantum universe beyond our current understanding. So this month just marks the 25 years since scientists first produced a fifth state of matter, which has extraordinary properties, totally unlike solids, liquids, gases, and plasmas. This achievement garnered a Nobel Prize and changed physics, so pretty crazy. So now there's a new study. It's in the journal Nature, and it built on that legacy, featuring the results from 2 years of work at NASA's Cold Atom Lab, which became the first facility to produce that fifth state of matter. And it's called a Bose-Einstein condensate, BEC, in Earth orbit, using one of the most sensitive instruments mankind has ever built. So a fundamental physics facility on the International Space Station, the miniature Cold Atom Lab, cools atoms down to ultra-cold temperatures in order to study their basic physical properties in ways that would not be possible on Earth. But now the mission team reports on the details of getting this unique lab up and running, as well as their progress toward a long-term goal of using microgravity to illuminate new features of the quantum world. So whether you know it or not, quantum science touches our lives every single day. Quantum mechanics refers to, the brand of physics that focuses on the behaviors of atoms and subatomic particles, and is the foundational part of many components in many modern technologies, including our cell phones that we use every day, computers, that just employ the wave nature of electrons in silicon. So David Aveling, who is a member of the Cold Atom Lab science team at NASA's Jet Laboratory in Southern California, and he's also the co-author of this study, he says, even dating back to when the first Bose-Einstein condensates were made, they recognized how working in space could provide big advantages in studying these quantum systems. There have been some focused demonstrations in this regard, but now with the continuous operation of Cold Atom Lab, we're showing there's a lot to gain by doing these prolonged experiments day after day in orbit. So the colder atoms are, the slower they move and the easier they are to study. So the ultra-cold atom facilities, like the Cold Atom Lab, which uses lasers, can cool atoms down to within a fraction of a degree above absolute zero, or the temperature at which they would theoretically stop moving entirely. The chilling atoms is also the only way to produce a Bose-Einstein condensate. Scientists produce BECs in a vacuum, so on the Earth, atoms are pulled down by gravity and fall quickly to the floor of the chamber, typically eliminating observation times to less than a second. So with the weightlessness of the space station, the BECs can float, not unlike the astronauts on board, of course, and then inside the Cold Atom Lab, that means longer observing times. So unlike solids, liquids, gases, and plasmas, these BECs don't form naturally. They actually serve as a valuable tool for quantum physics because all of the atoms in a BEC have the same quantum identity. So they collectively exhibit properties that are typically displayed only by individual atoms or subatomic particles. So BECs make those microscopic characteristics visible at a macroscopic scale. Pretty cool, right? So the ultra-cold atom facilities in space should also be able to reach colder temperatures than Earth-bound laboratories. So one way to do that is just to simply make the ultra-cold atom clouds slowly expand, which causes them to get cooler and is easier to do without gravity pulling atoms to the ground. So longer observing times and colder temperatures both provide opportunities for deeper insights into the behaviors of the atoms and the BECs. So on Earth, the coldest temperatures and the longest observing times have been achieved only by experiments with entire rooms full of dedicated hardware or tall towers. So basically it's like a dishwasher-sized cold atom lab. That's it. It hasn't yet set new records in those categories, but its basic capabilities are cutting edge, and it's basically bundling the abilities of an extremely large lab into a small package. Pretty interesting, I have to say. Now, my next story I want to share with you is super cool in my opinion. There has now been, so Johns Hopkins University is now responsible for publishing a free online college course for conducting psychological first aid on people with depression, anxiety, or emotional distress. Isn't that awesome? So, as the world is becoming more and more attentive to the importance of mental health, and researchers are offering up, invaluable resource on how to give psychological first aid, because it's true, I think a lot of people get scared of, how can we help somebody that is struggling. So since it was released to the public, thousands of people from around the world have completed the course, with more than 200,000 students currently enrolled in it. Not only that, it's become one of the most popular cases offered on this, it's called Coursera, that's where it's being broadcasted. So the class is taught by pioneering psychological expert Dr. George S., who is the co-author of the book Johns Hopkins Guide to Psychological First Aid and co-founder of the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. So the class, it's divided into a number of 30-minute and 2-hour lessons over the course of 5 weeks, covers everything from reflective listening to prioritizing and responding to life-threatening mental health situations. The course actually covers Dr. Everly's rapid psychological response model, which stands for reflective listening, assessment of needs, prioritization, intervention, and disposition. So it says this specialized course provides perspectives on injuries and traumas that are beyond those physical in nature. The rapid model is readily applicable to public health settings, the workplace, the military, faith-based organizations, mass disaster venues, and even the demands of more commonplace critical events. So dealing with the psychological aftermath of, accidents, robbery, suicide, homicide, or community violence. So in addition, the rapid model has been found effective in promoting personal and community resilience. So if you are interested in this really awesome course, so it's on, it's Coursera, but yeah, you can just search up the Johns Hopkins University Psychological First Aid course. It'll pop up right away for you, and it is completely free. So pretty awesome if you are interested in psychological first aid. It was just something I think everyone should have a base understanding of, in my opinion, because you never know when you might need to help somebody in need, or yourself. I think it's just good to have that base of knowledge underneath your skin. So pretty cool. Go check that out if that is of interest to you. Now I just want to add a little cute story about a family who is using a really simple mailbox to spread peace and understanding and kindness right now. Of course, like I've been saying in every episode, there's so much chaos and craziness in our world, and we have to make sure that we are standing together and strong and spreading kindness every single second that we get. So this family is literally using a mailbox with the word unity on it, just to spread peace and understanding. So a father and son, this is in Chesterland, they're using this mailbox to share messages of love and kindness. So they're letting people take a message and leave a message at the mailbox. If you are in Chesterland, it's on Mayfield Road. So if you are interested to go check that mailbox out, you can do that if you're in the area. But it's basically just messages that you would want to share with your community, ideas you want to get out there, basically to better ourselves together, to get people off, social media for a second, off their phones, just writing and with a pen and a paper or a pencil and a piece of paper, write down an inspirational message. You can leave it in the box, and then you can actually take another note for yourself. So it's just such a simple thing, but honestly, it's such a cool way to spread kindness and inspiration and peace, understanding in a world where I think a lot of us are either sucked into our social media and our news feeds, or out there trying to make a change. But there's so much going on, and we have to make sure that we are focusing on always spreading kindness and peace every chance that we get. So go check that out if you are in Chesterland, but if not, I'm sure I've seen so many things like this all over the internet of people doing it in different communities, or start one for yourself. Why not? Start one for your own community if you want to do this little unity mailbox. I think it's a pretty awesome idea. All right, it is time for another break, but when we get back, I do have some more feel-good stories for you, of course, including what a Black protester did. He's being hailed as a hero after he was helping the opposite side protester. He did something pretty amazing. So don't miss that story. I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Okay, one more stretch of today's episode. I have a few more awesome stories, so let's jump right in again. So, like I mentioned, a Black protester is being hailed for his kindness and thinking while in this kind of craziness protest that happened. So a Black Lives Matter protester he's being hailed as a hero. He came to rescue of a counter protester who was injured at an anti-racism rally in London. So his name is Patrick Hutchinson, and he's basically his face. You might have seen his face on some news outlets around the world because he was photographed carrying this man to safety during the protest, and this was near Waterloo Bridge just over this past weekend. So he says that It had been the first anti-racism gathering that he had attended since the movement gained worldwide traction, of course, following the death of George Floyd. So although the event was meant to be peaceful, a peaceful protest for police reform, some fights broke out in London after counter-protests gathered in opposition to the rally. So he says it was really hectic. It was almost like a stampede. It was just a lot of people and then some fights, and it was just really crazy. So him and his friends joined the rally, and he witnessed this white demonstrator fall to the ground, basically following a violent altercation that was between protesters and the counter-protesters. Since this man was kind of surrounded by people, he wasn't able to get up from the fetal position, so he was on the ground with a huge crowd over top of him. Everyone's fighting. It is, not a good scene. He couldn't get up. And so he said his life was under threat. I sort of just thought, well, if he stays here, he's not gonna make it. So that's when Patrick got up and literally carried this man out of the crowd. So his friends formed a protective ring around the injured man, and then he hoisted him onto his shoulders and carried him away from the crowd, and then he passed him off to a nearby police officer, and that police officer thanked him for his courageous actions. So since this gesture was captured just by a photographer, and it was put up on social media. There's a bunch of things on the internet about it, but social media users and some government figures actually from across the political spectrum have actually hailed him as a hero. But he says he just simply wanted to do the right thing. He says, I want to see equality for everybody. I am a father, a grandfather, and I would love to see my young children, my young grandchildren, my nieces, my nephews have a better world that I have lived in. The world I live in has been better than my grandparents and my parents, and hopefully we can continue until we have total equality for everyone. Pretty cool. Even at, protesters and anti-protesters coming together just to make sure that everyone is safe in all this chaos and craziness. It's so cool to see both sides, and that's what equality is all about, making sure that everyone is just helping each other and being equal, because everyone deserves to be equal. So I had to share that story. You might have seen it already on your news feeds, but I just loved it. I thought it was such a cool demonstration of total equality for everyone, and someone just standing up for what he believes in to do the right thing. So there you have that. Now, there was a startup in Uganda, and they recycle plastic bottles, but now they're turning those into personal protective equipment, face shields for hospitals. Pretty cool. So kind of killing two birds with one stone. These two entrepreneurs were working to upcycle plastic waste into building materials, and they've kind of altered their production to tackle the shortages of the PPE equipment. Or the PPE, so the personal protective medical equipment, since all of the COVID-19 chaos. So after the government ordered all non-essential businesses to be closed, his name is Peter and his colleague Paige. They are the co-founders of the Taka Taka Plastics. They continued working in their plastics processing facility, but instead of, they usually did roof tiles and things like that, they began recycling plastic waste into face shields for the medical workers. So after posting an image of their prototype on social media, they got a surprising call from a regional hospital asking for 10 face shields because they just didn't have enough. So using locally sourced molds for molten plastic, the two finished the order and delivered them. And then before getting a call later in the afternoon from the very same hospital asking for more because the first ones worked out so well for them. Pretty cool. So the PPE shortages have, occurred worldwide. We all know that. And in the Ugandan hospitals, it's no exception there as well. So far, they have made 1,200 face shields. What's even more inspiring is that the company's staff of 14 includes 6 employees who were homeless or jobless youth. Pretty awesome. So around 500 of the face shields have been sold to NGOs and privately managed health facilities at a low cost, and the other 700 were donated to public hospitals. So they hope to build upon the success of the face shields and expand its operations into a more appropriate plastic processing and recycling facility. Currently, their location can reduce around 132 pounds of plastic per day, but they're aiming to establish a monthly capacity of 9 metric tons. Crazy. But yeah, they see hundreds of tons of plastic thrown away annually, and their initiative solution is to the PPE crisis. They've pushed these entrepreneurs to just dream bigger and start, turning things into, turning this plastic into things that we can all use in a time of need. So pretty cool little startup company. Now, I want to talk about this Kentucky tattoo parlor, who is creatively covering up hate tattoos for no charge at all. Tattoos are really awesome. As we all know, they can be a beautiful avenue of self-expression, but a lot of people, maybe some that were involved in gangs or hate groups in the past, they can be a very visible reminder of a mistake. And tattoo removal is very painful. It's an expensive process. So a lot of people kind of don't do it. And they kind of have things maybe on their skin that they aren't happy with. And tattoo removal remains out of reach for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. So, this tattoo parlor in Kentucky has come up with this creative solution, and they just want to help people out. So it's called the Gallery X Art Collective. It's in Murray. And they posted an offer on Facebook. This was just the past week, to cover up any racist, hateful, or gang-related tattoos completely free of charge. So in the first week, they received 30 requests. They were just inspired by the Black Lives Movement to do their part to end discrimination and support those who have had the courage to leave their hateful past behind. So he says a lot of people when they were younger just didn't know any better and were left with mistakes on their bodies. We just want to make sure everybody has a chance to change. So their friendly tattoo artists have covered up, large scales of swastikas on a man's chest. He was so embarrassed. He wanted just to get it covered. He never took his shirt off around his children because of it. So they reinvented that. They've invented things on people's arms and legs all over their bodies of just hate symbols or things that, they're not so proud of. Their first pro bono client was a woman named Jennifer Tucker, though. She's now a mother of 2, and she regarded the Confederate flag tattoo she got at 18. She credits the youthful mistake to having grown up in an all-white neighborhood where the flag was frequently flown with pride. It wasn't until she moved away from her hometown and got involved in peace movements to end racial injustice that her mind was kind of opened to the entire situation. She says, every time I attend a group meeting or protest, I make a new friend, and I don't want to be standing next to them with a Confederate flag on my leg. So they changed it into something completely different. They basically was once, an emblem of hate. They've converted it into a humorous conservation starter. It's a cartoon character called Pickle Rick from Ricky and Morty. So if you know Ricky and Morty, you might know what I'm talking about. So there's an image up online if you want to go check it out. It's a pretty cool little transformation that they did. So if you were in the Kentucky area, you've heard of this studio and you need something removed, they are offering it free of charge. You can go in and request to get your hateful sign or mistake on your body removed, and that way, you can move on from it and you don't have to worry about that. Now, lastly, I just want to quickly tell you that the Northern Central University in Minneapolis has started the George Floyd Scholarship Fund, of course, to honor the man who has passed away and everything that has been going on. So the university announced this new scholarship. This is at Floyd's memorial service. But yeah, so the internship will go toward the university's Act 6 program, which produces future urban leaders, they say. So Dr. Scott Hagan, the president of the university, who spoke during the memorial, challenged every other president in America to do the same. He says, I am now challenging every university president in the United States to establish your own George Floyd Memorial Scholarship Fund. He says the fund for Northern Central University has already received $53,000. So, North Central University sits about 3 miles from the intersection where Floyd was killed, by the Minneapolis police officers on May 25th. So, that's what they have done so far. They've now started this fund, for the scholarship, which is pretty awesome. I hope more and more people, are able to start this scholarship fund or get to be a part of it. It's pretty cool. All right. Well, that is all the feel-good, positive stories I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. I so appreciate you being here. here, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, to like and follow us on social media, and leave a 5-star review. I absolutely love reading the reviews. It helps out so much. And head over to our social media and start a conversation with me. I would love to engage with you and talk about anything and everything. So don't forget to hit those follow buttons, subscribe button, and leave your review. I look forward to sharing more feel-good, positive stories with you next time. Stay safe, stay positive, and spread kindness and peace every chance you get. I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.